18 years after Prime 3, Metroid Prime 4 is finally here, and it's pretty divisive it seems. I had no expectations for this game. After the first trailer, I didn't watch any others. The only thing I knew about this game before it was released was I knew Samus had a motorcycle, because of the amiibo. That and Silex from Metroid Prime Hunters was in it. But believe me, that doesn't really matter, because he only shows up a handful of times, but I'll talk more about that a bit later. Let's get into the game. What surprised me about this game was even though this is Prime 4, and Silex from Hunters is in it, this game doesn't feel connected to the previous games at all really. No Dark Samus or Phazon, and even though Silex is here, I don't think you need to play Hunters to understand this game's story. Anyway, the game starts at a Galactic Federation base that's getting attacked by space pirates. Samus shows up to help the Federation. This intro does a good job at teaching the player the basics. The intro is good, but it is pretty action-packed. It might have less action than Corruption's intro though. I'm bringing this up because I prefer Metroid game intros to be more like Echoes. Echoes starts with a mystery. It only has a little bit of action. To be fair, Prime 4 does kind of do this with Silex. He's leading the group of space pirates that are attacking the base, and he has Metroids that can fuse into other creatures to make them stronger, similar to the X-Parasites in Fusion. So there is a bit of mystery at the beginning of the game, but I stopped caring about Silex because it felt like the game stopped caring about him. After the intro, Silex kinda disappears from the plot until the end of the game. I wish Silex was more like Dark Samus in Echoes. In that game, you run into Dark Samus a bunch of times throughout the playthrough, but while playing Prime 4, I kept forgetting Silex was a part of this game's story. Anyway, back to the intro. After the boss fight, Silex, when trying to shoot Samus, ends up hitting this machine that has an artifact on it. The artifact ends up teleporting Samus, Silex, and some Galactic Federation soldiers to a planet called Vuros. When this happens, we learn about a new species introduced to the series, the Lemorn. The Lemorn used to live on Vuros, but they used up all the planet's energy. They tried to fix this by using a different energy called green energy, but the green energy ended up mutating them into Grievers. Grievers end up becoming the main enemy type you fight by the end of the game. But the Lemorn want Samus to plant a memory fruit on a different planet so their species can continue. When Samus gets brought to Vuros, she gets the psychic powers of the Lemorn. I'll talk more about them in a bit. The rest of the story is Samus exploring Vuros and collecting teleporter keys so she can teleport herself and the Federation members back home. So throughout the game, you'll run into a few members of the Galactic Federation. A lot of people don't like their inclusion. Even though I like the feeling of isolation most Metroid games have, I don't mind them being in this game. They serve their purpose in the story. It was kind of annoying how often you had to protect them though, especially towards the end of the game. It is weird that they keep trying to talk to Samus and trying to start conversations with her, but Samus doesn't speak in this game. This was an issue Prime 3 had as well, but it was way more noticeable in Prime 4 in my opinion. I also really didn't like how every time you collect an upgrade for your cannon, you have to go all the way back to Miles to use it. It just felt like a way for the developers to make the game longer. Speaking of things that feel like they're there just to increase the game length, the Soul Valley. So Prime 4 has 5 main areas where you play a traditional Metroid game. Explore, finding upgrades, solving puzzles, and beating bosses. But these places are all connected by a place called the Soul Valley. So you know how the Great Temple in Prime 2 connected all the areas together and had shortcuts to let you quickly go from one place to another? The Soul Valley is kind of like that, except way bigger, and no faster way to travel it. When I first got to this part of the game, I thought the game was going to be non-linear and let me choose where I wanted to go. Kinda like Breath of the Wild. But no, the game is linear. Soul Valley is where you get to ride the bike, which is called the Viola. To be fair, the Soul Valley is a good place to mess around with the Viola, but other than that, this place kinda sucks. There are some items around to collect, and a boss fight, but for the most part, it's empty and boring. And like I said, you never get a quicker way to travel across it. This game really needed some sort of fast travel system, because you have to travel across this place so many times throughout the playthrough. So because I probably won't mention the Viola again, I want to talk about the tutorial you have to do when you first get it. I don't have much to say about it, I just thought it felt really out of place. It doesn't feel like it's from a Metroid game at all. Besides that, I guess it's a fine tutorial. Anyway, let's get into the actual gameplay. Metroid Prime 4 uses a similar control scheme as the Prime 1 remaster. You can also use the pointer controls, or if you're playing on Switch 2, you can use mouse mode. There is no option for a control scheme that's like the GameCube titles. I like the way the game's controlled on GameCube, but I don't think those controls would work very well for this game. Like I said earlier, this might be the most action-packed Prime game. Those old controls work fine for exploring, but can be annoying when fighting a boss. These controls work just as good as they did in the Prime 1 remaster. One difference is, this game lets you free aim while you're locked onto a target like Prime 3. Combat with normal enemies still isn't very interesting. You either shoot a bunch or you freeze an enemy and shoot them with a missile. Unless you're in the mines. I really like this gimmick. If you shoot a missile in the mines, more enemies will come after you. So it's better just to stick with your beams. I kept using missiles out of instinct, and it made some parts of this way harder. Beams don't stack anymore, they're back to the way they were in Prime 1 and 2. Prime 4 has 3 elemental beams, an ice beam which freezes enemies, a flame beam that burns them, and an electric beam that shocks them. There are a few puzzles that use these in creative ways, but in combat I would only occasionally use them, other than the Ice Beam. The Ice Beam is just as good as it always is. You can get upgrades to make the beam stronger if you find the puzzle rooms around the Soul Valley. I think this game's combat is at its best during the boss fights. The boss fights might be some of the best fights in the Prime series in my opinion. Some of them, like the Omega Griever, took a little too long to beat though, but overall I thought they were really good. One of my favorites was the plant boss towards the beginning of the game. It used one of Samus's new psychic abilities. Like I mentioned earlier, when Samus gets teleported to Vyros, she gets psychic powers. For the most part, this is just an excuse to collect all of her upgrades again. Like, for example, instead of collecting the grapple beam, in Prime 4, we collect the psychic grapple. Some of the upgrades let you do new things with them. To use the grapple as an example, you can now use it to stick to certain walls. But for the most part, the new psychic powers function the same way as their normal counterparts. There are some new abilities that aren't psychic versions of old ones though. There's the Psychic Glove that lets you move these psychic orb things. It's mainly used to open doors and sometimes used in puzzles. The Psychic Beam is a beam that slows down time whenever you use it, and you can control its direction. I think this is a really cool power-up. I wish it was used a bit more. My favorite part of the Prime series is exploration. I think the exploration in this game is good. The items are hidden fairly well and satisfying to find and collect. But I didn't enjoy exploring Vyros nearly as much as I did Talon 4 or Aether. I think there's two reasons why. One, I didn't care about this game's story. I kept forgetting about Silex, and I don't know enough about the Lemorn to care about them. And the second reason is, I thought most of these places were boring. Other than the forest area, the Soul Valley, and the mines, all the other places are man-made, except for a few sections of them. Or Lemorn-made? I thought it made each area feel similar. Like sure, one has lava and one has ice, but they both look pretty similar. I guess I wish they did a bit more to make them stand out. I don't think having lava flow through the walls, or a few walls being frozen was enough. That's my opinion though. Even though I didn't like the areas very much, I thought the puzzles to collect upgrades were pretty good. I didn't get 100% item completion though. But if I ever replay this game in the future, I think I might. I said if I replay instead of when I replay, because the end of this game really made me not want to replay it anytime soon. So all three of the games that came before have an endgame fetch quest. You'd get towards the end of the game, but before you could fight the final boss, you'd have to search the whole map again to collect stuff. Prime 1 had the Chozo artifacts. If you knew where they were, you could collect a lot of them throughout the game, and only need to get a few at the end of it. If you can't find them though, there were statues that gave you pretty obvious hints. Prime 2 had the Sky Temple keys. The Sky Temple keys are hidden in Dark Aether. I don't know how many you could collect before needing them to progress, but you can fast travel to each area's temple once you get the light suit. Prime 3 barely had a fetch quest. In Corruption, you have to find energy cells. There are 9 in total, but you only need 5 to finish the game. The other ones lead to extra items. But if you don't know what doors to open, you might need to collect more. Each Prime game improved on the fetch quest, and I thought Prime 4 probably wouldn't have one. Beyond is already the longest Prime game, and has a lot of going back and forth and no fast travel to extend the playtime. But Prime 4 has a fetch quest, and it might be the worst one in the series. So once you're done in the mines, Miles will tell you to collect some things. The first thing you need to collect is the mech parts. There are only 6 parts, 5 of them are hidden in the Soul Valley, and 1 is in the Flare Pool. These were pretty easy to find, and if these were the only thing you needed to collect to get to the final boss, I would say this is the second best endgame hunt in the series. But sadly, you have to collect green energy. So towards the beginning of the game, we're told to collect green energy. When you're in the Soul Valley, you can destroy green crystals to get some energy. So I collected some if it was on the way to where I was going. I didn't think it was important. But then towards the end of the journey, I was told that it was important and required to beat the game. I found all the big crystals and shrines that give you more green energy, but even then, filling the green energy meter took me almost 2 hours. 2 hours of my playthrough was me collecting green energy in the Soul Valley. Maybe this is why I dislike the Soul Valley so much. Once you finally collect all the mech parts and green energy, Samus and the Federation members head to the Chrono Tower, where they run into Silex. And even though I didn't like Silex in this game, because he doesn't do much, the final boss fight is really good. I wish the Federation members weren't here, so I didn't have to worry about reviving them when they get knocked down, but other than that, this might be my favorite fight in the game. After the first phase, Silex and Samus get teleported, and the second phase starts. I don't like the second phase as much as the first, but I thought it was really cool that Silex can knock your energy tanks out, and you have to try and grab them before he gets them. Once you beat Silex, Samus and the Federation members try going back home, but Silex appears again. The members of the Federation sacrifice themselves so Samus can get away. In the after credits scene, we see Samus plants the memory fruit on another planet. And that's Metroid Prime 4. So a lot of fans are saying Prime 4 is the worst Prime game. I don't know if it's the worst, but it's definitely my least favorite. Even though this is my least favorite Prime game, I don't think it's a bad game. I just thought it was disappointing in some ways.